should be going. If a product is equal to 0, then one of all or all of its factors is 0. Here's what that means. 0 times 7 is 0. 6 times 0 is 0. If you put 0 in as one of the numbers, you're going to get 0. But what we've been dealing with is stuff like this. So we're going to learn today what numbers would make this 0. Well, if I put a 4 in here, I have to put a 4 in everywhere I see x. That would turn this to 4 minus 4. This number would turn into 0. This would turn into 6. But that's going to make it 0. Does that make sense? What other number could I put in besides 4 that would make it 0? 2? Oh. If we put in -2, it'll make this one over here -6, because -2 minus 4 is -6. But the other one turns into 0, and -6 times 0 would still be 0. Okay, so that, if you already understand that, you're going to get the idea. Now, this one up top has 3 different potential answers. One that's really easy is this one over here. What number could I put in to that one that would make this thing turn into 0? 6. So one of the answers is 6. Because if I put 6 into there, that one turns into 0. This one turns into 13. You're like, how do I know that? Well, what's 3 times 6? 18. Minus 5 is 13. So that would turn to 13, but this one would turn into 0. And the other one over here, if I put in a 6 over here, -2 times 6 would be -12. Now, if I multiply all 3 of those numbers, I'm still going to get 0. Does that make sense? So if one of them, now how many are there? There's 3 of them up there. But one of the answers is 6. And what you do to figure that out, you can do it in your head, but you actually set that one equal to 0. When we add 6, we find out, okay, 6 would work. Now, there are 3 distinct little sets of numbers up there. One of the other numbers is this, 3x minus 5. I'm going to set that equal to 0 to figure this out. So if I add 5, I get 3x equals 5. Then if I divide by 3, I get x equals 5 over 3. Now, if I were to put that in the original, I would go -2 times 5 over 3. And then 3 times 5 over 3 minus, was it 5? Minus 5. Then 5 over 3 minus 6. Now you might be like, oh, I'm so lost. What are you talking about? Here's what I've got. I've got -2x, 3x minus 5, and x minus 6. That's the original equation. Everybody agree? But what I put in every time for x, if you notice, instead of x, every single time, I put in a 5 over 3. And here I had to put it in parentheses, and I put in 5 over 3. Now, if 5 over 3 is an answer, it's going to turn this whole thing into 0. Does that make some sense? We'll find out. We'll test it. When I hit enter, I'm not going to work with that. There we go. When I hit enter, it tells me that's 0. You might say, why? This one here turned into 0. Because 3 times 5 over 3 minus 5, that is 0. This middle one turned into 0 because we figured out how to make that one 0. Now, how do I make this one 0? You take negative 2x, you set it equal to 0. To solve that equation, we divide by negative 2. If you divide by negative 2 on both sides, you're going to get x is 0. That means if I put 0 in here, it outright turns that one into 0. Negative 2 times 0 is 0. Doesn't matter what this one is and this one is. This one will be negative 6. This one will be negative 5. But 0 times all those still makes it 0. We've got 3 answers that will turn it into 0 because there were 3 parts that we can set equal to 0. All right, now we need to look at this next one. This next one, there is a 5 sitting in front there. I don't know if that 5 is on yours, but that 5 really is irrelevant. What number could I put in there that will make this 0? 3. Now, here's how you get that. That one's very obvious because you're like 3 minus 3 is 0. But you get that by setting this equal to 0. And the reason I'm showing you that because the next one isn't as obvious how to get 0 if you don't learn how. So I'm glad that you're just saying, oh, if I put in a 3, I get it. But how do I do it? I solve that equation. I add 3 to both sides, I get 3. You do not need to do that. You just need to come up with the 3. I'm okay with that. But the next one, if you can't just automatically see it, you got to do a little work. So you take 2x plus 7, you set it equal to 0. You subtract 7, you get 2x equals negative 7. You divide by 2, you get x equals negative 7 over 2. So if I put either of those in, it's going to become 0. Now this one, x plus 1. If I set it equal to 0, I subtract 1. What's one of the solutions? What number can I put in there that'll make it 0? Minus 1. That's one of the answers. The other one actually should be pretty obvious as well. If you set 18x equal to 0 and divide by 18, if I put in what? It'll turn that one to 0. Zero divided by 18 is still 0. Or D. 7 plus x. Set that one equal to 0. 6 minus x. Set that one equal to 0. Then solve them. Figure out what x has to be to make those 0. It's 2 different equations. We did a little bit of this yesterday where we set things equal and solved. What's this one? Negative 7, because you subtract 7. And that makes sense. If I put negative 7, 7 plus negative 7, 0. This one, I'm going to subtract 6. I get negative 6. Then I divide by negative 1, or change the signs. X is 6. Oh, that makes sense. 6 minus 6 is 0. What you're really looking for is what makes one of those factors equal 0. Now for this one, take both of the factors, 6x minus 1, set that equal to 0, 2x minus 13, set that equal to 0, and solve them. And it's a simple solving by 2 steps. You do some adding or subtracting and then some dividing. You're going to get fractions for both of these. I'll give you a few seconds to try it on your own. Add 1, divide by 6, that one's 1/6. Okay, 6 is in the bottom. Add 13, divide by 2. could be written x plus 8 times x plus 8, and you could take off the little square. But it really doesn't matter, because if you set x plus 8 equal to 0 and x plus 8 equal to 0 again, you're going to get the same answer twice, and you don't need the same answer twice. What value will make that 0? Negative 8. That one only has one answer. Let's go into the next part. So the next part, we have a squared plus 5a equals 0. Be a little bit of this that we'll do tomorrow. I'm going to put some of each of these on to the worksheet, okay? But this one goes back to where we have to do some factoring. We've already learned how to factor. What we look for is what we can factor out of this. If I look at these, I can factor out an a. And a times a, that will give me a squared. A times what will give me 5a? 5. Okay, now whether you use a or you use x, here's what we've got. Now we've got a problem like we just finished doing. We set each of these equal to 0. This one is a equals 0. This one is a plus 5 equals 0. That one's already done. There's no more we need to do. If we put 0 in for a, it's going to make this thing turn to 0. But this one would be a as negative 5. But these come in 2 steps. You have to first factor them down. Did I get that right? By memory of just reading it. Okay. Now, sometimes they're not set up correctly. So what you have to do is you have to move some things. One of the sides always needs to be 0. This one doesn't have one of the sides equal 0. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the 2x and I'm going to subtract it. Now we have to be careful, because right away some people look and they think that's going to be 2. These are not like terms. One has a squared, one does not. So this is written 4x squared minus 2x equals 0. These are like terms. They can subtract and cancel out. But the reason we subtracted the 2x is to make that 0. But the other two don't cancel. Now we need to factor, and we need to decide what we can bring out. And we can always bring out the smallest amount of x's. So we can bring out an x, because that one has 1x, this one has 2. And we get also a number that we can bring out of each of them. And both of them are divisible by 2, so I'm also going to bring a 2 out in front. Remember doing this? Vaguely? Okay. Over here, this one's going to sit as 0 right now. We're not doing anything because we're not actually subtracting from this side. We're just redoing this side now. We're factoring it out. So this 2x over here, 2 times what is 4? 2. X times what is x squared? X. So this is 2x times 2x. That would get us the 4x. Minus 1. You're like, 1? 2x times 1 would get us 2x, and it's a negative. So that all equals 0. Now, 2x equals 0. 2x minus 1 equals 0. We set them each equal. This one, if I divide by 2, gets rid of that 2. X is 0. This one, add 1, then divide by 2. We get 1/2. Part C. This one already has one side equal to 0. We always have to make sure that that's the case. It's not the case in all of them, but this one is. Now we have to look at the numbers. What number can go into both 14 and 28? 7 will. Is there a bigger one? 14 will as well. You always look for the biggest. 7 is correct. It will go into both, but 14 obviously goes into 14. Then we see if it goes into 28. You just take your calculator, check. 28 divided by 14 is 2, so that'll work. The smallest amount of x's is an x, so I'm going to bring out an x. Now 14x times x would get us 14x squared. We're always trying to get back to the original by factoring plus 2. 2 times that's 28x. Now once you have them broken down, then you set each of the factors equal to 0. On the first one, we divided by 14. 0 divided by 14 is still 0. Second one, we subtract 2. X is negative 2. Now, I usually move the smaller one. I would consider the 6x the smaller one. So I'm making this side 0. It really doesn't matter. You can move either of them. What number can go into both 2 and 6? And then what's the smallest, what's the x's we can bring out? 1 or 2 x's? Just 1. 2x times x, 2x squared plus what over here? 3. Okay, finish it out. Tell me what are the 2 answers that'll make it 0. Set each of those equal to 0. If you got 0 and negative 3, you got it right. And that shouldn't take you longer than what it took me there, right? Once you have it broken down. You divide it by 2, you get 0. You subtracted 3, you get negative 3. Party. Is it in the correct format? What do we want? One side needs to be what? 0. So which one should we move? 5a. So let's subtract 5a. Starting to get it. Good job. 15a squared minus 5a equals 0. All right, your turn. What can you factor out? Break it down and then finish it. Solve it all the way. What number can come out? How many a's? 1. What do you have inside? 5 times what is 15? And an a, because that's how you get the a squared. Minus 1. It's still 1 times 5a. So remember, if it's the same exact thing, make sure you put the 1 there. That's sometimes what students forget. All right. Give you a moment to solve the rest. One of them is going to be an easy answer. One of them is going to be a fraction, which still is pretty easy. 5, I get 0. We add 1, we get 1. We divide by 3, we get 1/3. F looks a little different than anything we've had. No, it doesn't. I'm right. I was looking at the wrong one. I was looking at the one below on the page. All right. See if you can go all the way, factor this one all the way down. I'll give you a moment. What number did you bring out? 3, 5, and x. Then in here is and an x plus 5. Okay. If you got that, you got the correct first step. Because 5 goes into both of them. So now we get 5x equals 0. If I divide by 5, x is 0. 3x plus 5 equals 0. I subtract 5. Then I divide by 3. And we got it. Wait. If you understand, work ahead with G and H. We're still going to do G and H. If you get it, this is the type of stuff we'll do tomorrow on the worksheet. Okay to move on? What can go into 9 and 6? It's not 6. 3 and a s. And we get 2s minus . Okay? So 3s equals 0. Now this, I'll show the work once. Whenever it's 0, it always ends up being 0. Like that, right? Because you divide, 0 divided by anything is still 0. Then this one, 2s minus 3 equals 0. We add 3. Then we divide by 2. Again, I don't need you to show those steps. I'm okay if you do show the steps. Why do we have students show the steps early on in algebra? So they understand what they're doing and they see the steps. You're getting to a point where now if you do more in your head, that's good, because when we get to algebra 2, if you take algebra 2, if you don't take algebra 2, it's fine. But if you take algebra 2, then you don't show as many steps in algebra 2. Okay? Because you don't need to. You're doing more in your head. We should have developed that. Okay, what's this one? What do we got to move first? 18. So I'm going to add 18x. And I get 0 equals 9x squared plus 18x. Now I'm going to show you something. Could I have left that out? I could have got the same thing, right? I understood, oh, I added the 18x. And that's what I'm saying. I don't need to see that. I would understand what you did. But now, I want to know, what are we bringing out? What number can go in both 9 and 18? And, yeah. And then we get plus, okay. So 9x equals 0. I divide. I get x is 0. X plus 2 is 0. And I get